Alright, what's going on guys? Today, we're going to take a look at the 2019 Challenger decks. Yep, that's right, they're back. And I am super happy about that because these things are kind of amazing if you want to get into Standard at a reasonable price. It's kind of great. So, we're not going to go over the complete deck lists in this video. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how the decks work so you can decide which deck you want to buy. The decks feature all 5 colors and they're built around the 3 major archetypes, so chances are there's a deck that fits your playstyle. So let's start with United Assault. This is a mono white aggro deck that looks to flood the board super quick with a bunch of hyper aggressive creatures. Things like Sky Marcher Aspirant, Dauntless Bodyguard, and a Danto Vanguard. All of these creatures have more power than their mana cost. The Sky Marcher and the Bodyguard each have 2 power for 1 mana, and the Vanguard essentially has 3 power, at least when it's attacking, for just 2 mana. So ultimately, you just get to put tons of power on the battlefield super quick. And then the payoffs for being so aggressive comes in the forms of Pride of the Conquerors and Banalish Marshal. If you have the City's Blessing, the Pride of the Conquerors gives all of your creatures +2/+2. And since it's not uncommon to have 4 or 5 creatures out, it just sends a shockwave of power straight at your opponent. The Marshal does the same thing. It's a 3 mana 3/3 that gives all other creatures you control +1/+1. It's a little bit less explosive, but it sticks around for multiple turns, and it's a 3 mana 3/3, which isn't bad. The deck also has a life gain sub-theme with a Johnny's Pridemate, Healer's Hawk, and Leonin Vanguard. A Johnny's Pridemate gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you gain life, and both the other creatures allow you to do just that. The Hawk has lifelink, and the Vanguard gets +1/+1 and allows you to gain a life if you control 3 creatures at the beginning of combat. This can actually get out of hand sometimes, and it allows you to just assemble a big giant beefy creature to kind of hammer your way through your opponent's defenses if the game goes on too long. So yeah, not bad. Also note that the deck comes with History of Benalia and Legion's Landings, which are the more valuable cards of the bunch, so definitely worthy of note. History of Benalia is a great value engine, puts out a lot of power, and Legion's Landing allows you to kind of grind out games against, decks like Esper Control and whatnot, so definitely useful. So, if you want to flood the board with a bunch of small creatures and start ripping away at your opponent's life total before they can get their own strategy going, this might be the deck for you. If burn is more your thing, then you might want to consider Lightning Aggro. It's a mono red deck that is perfectly suited for your average everyday pyromaniac. Let's get right to the good stuff. The deck plays Shock, Lightning Strike, and Wizards of Lightning. This right here pretty much exemplifies what this deck is doing. If these cards make you happy, then yeah, Lightning Aggro is probably where you want to be. The creatures in this deck are just as great, with things like Fanatical Firebrand, Viashino Pyromancer, and Goblin Chain Whirler. Even your creatures are good at dishing out damage. The Firebrand can be sacrificed to deal 1 damage to something, the Pyromancer hurls a fireball at the opponent's face when it enters the battlefield, and the Chain Whirler deals 1 damage to everything on your opponent's side of the board when it enters the battlefield. Even your creatures are little pyromaniacs. How adorable. Another really cool aspect of this deck is Runaway Steamkin and Experimental Frenzy. So the Steamkin gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cast a red spell. It can only have 3 counters on it at once, but that allows you to build a 2 mana 4/4 while you fling your burn spells. So not bad. It also allows you to remove those counters to add 3 mana. Now, the Experimental Frenzy says that you can't cast cards from your hand, which sounds like a bad thing, but you can cast cards directly from the top of your library. Now, because this is a burn deck, you're going to empty your hand out super quick anyway, so it's probably going to be empty by turns 4 or 5, most likely. So the reason this is so good is because it basically allows you to, kind of fill up on gas. As soon as your tank is empty, you've got basically your entire deck that you can just start ripping burn spells off the top of, and then those burn spells will add counters to Steamkin, and then you can remove those counters to add more mana so that you can cast more burn spells from the top of your deck. So this kind of allows you to just chain spells off the top of your deck over and over and over again with these 2 cards. It's kind of a cool little combo, and that's just something that can happen sometimes, and it's super fun when it does. Anyway, there's also a Rekindling Phoenix in this thing. I mean, I don't have much to say other than holy crap, you're getting a Rekindling Phoenix. That's pretty awesome, am I right? Right, so anyway, if you like flinging burn spells and playing aggressive red creatures that also like to fling burn spells, then yeah, lightning aggro. That's the one you want. If you would prefer to take things a little bit more slowly, perhaps Deadly Discovery is more your style. It's a green-black mid-range deck that looks to kill its opponent's creatures while outvaluing them with lots of cards that 2-for-1 the opponent. It starts with Wild Growth Walker, which says whenever you explore, you gain 3 life and you put a +1/+1 counter on it. This is really good against the previous 2 decks because it blocks all of the white creatures from United Assault, and the life gain is a burn player's worst nightmare. And then if you can pair this guy with Merfolk Branchwalkers and Jade Light Rangers, you should be in the clear from the early game aggro deck. The Branchwalker lets you explore once, and the Jade Light Ranger explores twice, meaning that on turn 3 you can gain 6 life and turn the Walker into a 3/5 that's basically just going to completely annihilate every creature from the white and red decks. So not bad. Plus, just exploring in general is super useful, being able to churn through your deck, look at your cards, decide what you want to draw and not want to draw, super nice. And then the fact that you're gaining tons of life and building a big creature at the same time, pretty handy. Once you've stabilized against the aggro decks, you have plenty of ways to start generating value in the later turns, with things like Ravenous Chupacabra, Golgari Findbroker, and the Eldest Reborn. The Chupacabra kills a creature when it enters the battlefield, the Findbroker lets you get a permanent back from your graveyard, and the Eldest Reborn allows you to 3-for-1 your opponent, since they have to sacrifice a creature or a planeswalker, discard a card, and then you get a creature at the end of it. And all of these cards, they're just great at generating value. You just want to outvalue your opponent and grind them out. And hey, it's a green-black deck, so naturally it's good at killing stuff. You get Cast Down to deal with pesky threats, and Find Finality, which generates more value if you cast it for Find, and Finality is a nice little board sweeper if you are being overwhelmed. Both super useful. It should also be noted that the deck comes with Vraska the Relic Seeker, as well as a Shockland, Overgrown Tomb, which is kind of surprising because, well, it's a Shockland. Anyway, if you like to grind your opponent out in the late game by outvaluing them and then beating down with creatures once you have deprived them of resources, you might consider Deadly Discovery. And then finally we have Arcane Tempo, a blue-red deck that's looking to capitalize on flinging spells. It's easier just to show you what I mean than to try to explain it. You see, the deck plays things like Goblin Electromancer, Crackling Drake, and Niv Mizzet, who is white the big boy. So Goblin Electromancer makes all of your spells cheaper, so you can cast more of them at a quicker pace. Doing so will grow the Crackling Drake because it has power equal to the number of spells you've cast, that is to say in your graveyard and in exile, so even if your opponent exiles your graveyard, it's still massive. And then Niv Mizzet, well, it gets crazy. You draw a card every time anyone casts an instant or sorcery, that includes your opponent. So drawing a card every single time an instant or sorcery is cast ever, and you deal a damage every single time you draw a card. Trust me, it's insane. Your opponent casts a spell, you get to draw a card, and then drawing that card allows you to deal 1 damage to them or one of their creatures. You cast a spell, you get to deal a damage and draw a card. It's insane. It's really insane if you get Niv Mizzet down. Especially considering the deck also has things like Op, Chart a Course, and Radical Idea. So all of these allow you to draw cards, allowing you to churn through your deck and find the stuff you need. So, you don't have to worry about am I going to draw my big win conditions? You're just digging through your deck so much that you have a much better chance of hitting those things that you really want. And then casting all of these both make the Crackling Drake bigger and trigger Niv Mizzet constantly. Take Chart a Course for example. If you cast it, you trigger Niv Mizzet and you draw a card. Drawing that card triggers Niv Mizzet and you deal 1 damage to anything. Then you draw your 2 cards from Chart a Course, which then allows you to deal 2 more damage. So basically for 2 mana, you get to draw 3 cards and deal 3 damage. With Electromancer, it only costs 1 mana to cast, and you'll also be giving the Crackling Drake +1/+0 permanently as well. It's just practically unfair. Another card that capitalizes on all this spell slinging is Arclight Phoenix. You can dump it into the graveyard on purpose by discarding it to Chart start a course or by jumpstarting Radical Idea, and then it comes back into play for free as you cast all of these draw spells. So it's kind of crazy. Basically, you just dump it, whatever, put it in the graveyard, and then you're flinging all these spells, your Drake's getting bigger, you're drawing more cards with Niv-Mizzet, you're dealing damage with Niv-Mizzet. Then you go to combat and the Arclight Phoenix just comes into play for free. Kind of cool. Oh, and there's also Murmuring Mystic 2, which puts out a 1/1 flying bird token every time you cast a spell. Oh yeah, you can totally just build an army of burbs in no time with this thing, so yeah, kind of cool. And the deck also has some burn spells to try to survive the early game. Things like Lava Coil, Shock, and Beacon Bolt allow you to off your opponent's attackers in the early game so you can survive long enough to get all of this crazy stuff going. It's definitely perilous in the early game. You're definitely like killing everything and just desperately trying to cling to life. But man, once you get a Drake in play, once you get Niv-Mizzet in play, it just gets kind of ridiculous. Anyway, if you like slinging spells with lots of cool payoffs for doing so, Arcane Tempo seems like a good way to go about it. And that's it. Those are the decks. If you want to see the full deck list, I will leave a link to the official article announcing them in the description below. But hopefully this gives you a rough idea on how the decks work so you can buy the deck that fits your playstyle. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think about these. I know there's a lot of sort of contrasting opinions as to whether they're better or worse than last year. I've actually kind of made my own video about that in the past, but I'm curious to know what you guys think if you didn't post on that video. Also, for my subscribers, let me know if you want me to do upgrade guides for these. I've been thinking about it, but I just haven't committed to the idea yet, so I'm curious if the sort of regular viewers want to see that. If you want to see upgrade guides for these decks, yeah, let me know. I will definitely consider doing it. Also, let me know what you think the budget should be, because I'm not 100% sure. Normally I just do the price of the product, which would be $30 this time, so a $30 upgrade guide. But yeah, I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think. I know it's common for people to be like, leave a comment, tell me your favorite vegetable. But in this case, I legitimately would love some feedback on what I should do in terms of a budget if I do an upgrade guide. So yeah, let me know. But anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.